Hello, everyone. I'm Leandro, and we are talking today in our first webinar about USB 800, hazardous drugs. And I'm here with Jeff Spink, CEO of Analytics Corp, Andy Teague, our lab director and CIH, and Jack Simula, our customer service manager. As you can probably notice my accent, I'm not talking from US, I'm talking from Brazil right now. And we are here to discuss and with a series of webinars about USP 800. Give on this episode here, we're gonna give you a short overview what is USP 800. And we have these guys here so we can discuss a little bit and help everyone here about this content. So uh, Jeff, I would like you to introduce yourself and how we're going to start. What are our plans here for this webinar and what we are covering for everyone here?
Sure, Leandro. Thank you. Well, as Leandro said, I'm the CEO of Analytics, and we've been working with USP 800 now for probably almost 5 years. And during the time, we've had a lot of questions come up, and people kind of looking for some help and explanation on USP 800. So we decided we were going to try these webinars. We really appreciate Leandro helping us because he's been doing webinars now in Brazil since we really opened the office down there, and they've been tremendously helpful for the people in Brazil. The following has increased from the beginning to now. Leandro, how many people do you feel now are watching the webinars and taking advantage of some of the technical help?
Well, Jeff, in our YouTube channel right now, we have about 7,000 followers and subscribers. So it's growing a lot nowadays, but we still have, we do lives on Instagram too, where we have like 20,000 people. But, we're talking about 30,000 industrial hygienists in Brazil. I'm talking about industrial hygiene for them.
It's tremendous. So again, thanks for helping us with this. The way we're going to go about it, we've talked about it. The first couple are going to be somewhat short and more of an introduction to the USP 800. They're being recorded. Eventually, we're going to have them live, and there's going to be interaction. So at that time, they'll probably expand up to about 45 minutes for questions and answers. But as we said today, I'm going to try and give you a little bit of an idea about USP 800. I've got Andy and Jack here to help me through it. Probably today I'll do most of the talking because it's just the introduction, and I've been working with it, I guess, the longest. The next webinar that we do will be on the sampling process, how to sample, the kits that we send out, the chain of custody, and Jack will go through that. And then we'll move through the whole process of how the samples are analyzed. At that time, of course, Andy will head that discussion up more so. And we're going to get into things like interpreting the results, helping you with cleanup. How do you clean up if you do have high levels, and go through it like that. But so today is really the introduction, and I'd like to start out by just giving you a short bit of background on it. As I said, we have been looking at USP 800 since around 2015. We've actually been a large analytical laboratory since 1979, and we've been AIHA accredited since 1981. In the early days, we did a lot of pharmaceutical work with the company that owned us. It was Hoffman LaRoche. And so we got really pretty expert and developed probably more than 200 or 300 methods for different drugs. And some of them were hazardous drugs. So As I said, in 2015, when this started being discussed, USP 800 was actually published in 2016. We thought this is a perfect business for us to work in and help our clients through the process of analyzing for these hazardous and high potency drugs. So if you look at the evolution, let's say, of USP 800, it was published in 2016. It was supposed to go live in 2017, but it was delayed for a period of almost 2 years. It finally became enforceable December 1st of 2019. I think if you look at it, the document is pretty comprehensive. It talks a lot about keeping the workplace clean. It's an OSHA-like regulation whereby we want to make sure that the people that are working with the hazardous drugs are not being contaminated. They're not being exposed to the drugs, and if you look through it, it talks a lot about exposure and handling of the drugs. It kind of was patterned after USP 797. I don't know if many are working with the USP 797, but that's a regulation that was published again by United States Pharmacopoeia, and it really addresses the cleanliness of the compounding process, making sure that the hoods and the clean rooms are free of mold and contamination like that. If you kind of trace back the roots of 797, I believe it was started in around 2004. I think a lot of the push for 797 was because there were actually pharmacies that were found to be compounding in hoods that were full of mold and fungal matter, and that got into the drugs and caused a lot of problems. So once that was enacted and was being worked on, then they moved into the USP 800. So to begin with, the actual document, the actual USP 800 document looks like this, and I believe, Jack, it's we've put that up on our website, right?
Yeah, Jeff, it is. And if you go to our website and go under services, and you'll get a drop-down menu, and it says USP 800. You can click right there and bring up that document, along with other USP 800 related documents.
Yeah, I think also, Andy, we've published, or we've put up we're going to put up the list of NIOSH drugs, which is really kind of this document here, which is really kind of the essence of USP 800. Could you just touch on that for a minute for me?
Well, the NIOSH, current NIOSH listing is from 2016, and they categorize the drugs, the various types of hazardous drugs, the anti-neoplastics being the main interest at this point because of the high toxicity. There are some extra drugs that are described and listed on the website, the NIOSH website, along with that 2016 listing. But anyway, there's a listing for those that have been included since the list was published. So you can get some supplemental info to since the 2016 publishing.
Good, yeah. And as I mentioned, the next webinar we're going to do is going to be an in-depth discussion on the sampling process, the free kits that we send you to do the sampling, and we'll talk a lot about that, as well as the drugs and the processes and so forth. But if we stay with the theme of really trying to explain and discuss USP 800. If you go through the chapter 800, it's subdivided into several sections. And the sections address things like processes and engineering controls for the hospitals and the facilities that are working with the drugs. It goes through the protective clothing that you should be utilizing to protect yourself against the hazardous drugs. Training, cleaning, spills, a lot of information it's valuable. It's the type of information that is required in your program that you need to be following. As I said, it became enforceable on December 1st of 2019. USP, United States Pharmacopoeia, they don't enforce it. They just write the regulations addressing how to keep your healthcare facility clean. The actual enforcement is done by either the FDA or the State Board of Pharmacy. I believe that there are 2 or 3 states that have really made a push towards this through their state pharmacy board. And others are following and are getting ready to really push that as well. The other thing that I think you'll see in the chapter is kind of a description of the different areas that are of concern. We have found through some studies that we've done that when the drugs are actually received from the manufacturer, the outside of the container can be contaminated, can have the actual drug can be present on the outside of the container. So as you're unloading and handling it, you might be exposed to it. Certainly the transportation from the loading docks to the storage facility, could be an issue, the people that are moving it. The storage facilities themselves, we have found to be contaminated with these different drugs. And then it moves on into, where the compounding is occurring and all of the areas that, that's working to fill the bags, if it's IV or the pills. So as you can see, there's a lot of areas where contamination could be occurring, and it addresses that. Again, maybe Andy, you could kind of talk a little bit about exposure, both from the sense of the exposure that the healthcare people are facing, and just general exposure for a couple of minutes, if you would, please.
Okay. Well, you've got exposure concerns that are pretty traditional for industrial hygiene, for inhalation, adsorption, injection. The USP 800 focuses on dermal exposure.
Sure.
And the testing that is described in Section 6 of USP 800 is based on testing for contamination on surfaces. It deals with containment, it deals with personal protective equipment, it deals with decontamination, all of those things. But the interaction with the lab primarily is around the testing for surface contamination. And they provide a 1 nanogram per centimeter square value that's established to have been demonstrated to have demonstrable effects from persons getting a dose from surfaces contaminated at very low levels. But I'd encourage you to look at the surface testing as basically a check on cleanliness of your process, how well the process is being contained, and how well you're cleaning up after the processes. The actual surface, actual dose can't be interpreted from surface contamination. There are a lot of variables in how effectively an active pharmaceutical ingredient would be transferred from a surface to the skin and from the surface into the body as a dose. We do test air samples for a lot of pharmaceutical agents, and that can be important in the same setting as USP 800 surface contamination issues, because they're certainly in some of the situations where preparations that are short-lived are being made ready and close to the point of administration. There's some concerns about aerosol exposures. So that really looks like pretty traditional industrial hygiene, although it involves setting up testing for a lot of different agents. But again, surface sampling is described very well in the USP 800, but I would encourage you to not think of the surface sampling as a measure of what a person's dose is. It's a measure of the practices being employed and effectiveness of them.
Yeah, that's well said, Andy. Thank you. I guess the way to say it is that, there's a lot of ways for hazardous drugs to pass into your body. In this case, surface contamination is what we're really focusing on. USP 800, that's really what they're addressing. If we were talking about an OSHA type of protocol, it might be inhalation, but right now we're really addressing surface contamination, and as Andy said, for cleanliness.
If you look at a number of the OSHA standards where they get into surface contamination in the OSHA standards or in OSHA's processes, it's related to the practices being employed and evaluating the practices being employed. It's not an exposure standard. It's not a PEL for a surface contamination level. It's related to practices being employed, just like it's described in USP 800.
Yeah, and to kind of go along a little bit more with that, when you read the document, I believe it's in section 6 of the USP 800 document. Yeah, it's called Environmental Quality and Control, and that's really where they address sampling. And again, let's remember that the sampling is, and certainly initially the sampling is to see, where the areas are in your facility that may be a potential problem. And sampling is a pretty straightforward process for USP 800 when you're talking about wipe sampling. And Jack, could you just explain to the people what we have, keeping in mind that we're going to go into this in more detail the next time, but just give them a little overview of that, please.
Okay, Jeff, a quick overview of some of the things that we're going to cover in future webinars or live streaming are going to be things like what's included in our kits. And our kits are completely customizable, and so you get as many sample sets as you want, but we'll go into more detail into that later. But we'll cover things like what's in our kit, how do you order a kit, how do you take a sample, what do you do with the sample after you collect it, and how do you fill out a chain of custody, and then the basic items of getting a sample to the laboratory.
Yeah, great.
Yeah,
that's great. And I think, Leandro, you asked a question the last time we discussed this about who does the sampling.
Yeah, that's important. I don't know if our audience here knows who has to be concerned about this, who does the sampling. I think that's an important topic that for us to cover here, Jeff.
Yeah, well, when you talk about sampling, again, I'm going to refer to USP 797 because that's been around for about 15 years. And the people that work closely with USP 797 are the certifiers, the folks that go out and certify that the hoods are operating correctly. They maintain the hoods. They build the clean rooms in some cases, and these folks are kind of the front line right now of people that are being asked, hey, how do I sample for USP 800? And so they're a tremendous resource. They kind of fall under the umbrella, I call it CETA, stands for the Controlled Environmental Testing Association. We go to the conference every year. Unfortunately, it was canceled this year. It's usually in April, May. But at that conference, we set up and we talk with a lot of people, and we highly recommend that you look at the directory for CETA and maybe work with one of those folks, because I mean they know the whole layout of the facility. They're already in there, so they're a great resource. Another resource that you can use is the Industrial Hygiene Group, American Industrial Hygiene Association, AIHA. And Andy, you have a directory that people can find someone in their area. You can
consultants, their consultants listing, and it's available online also.
Right, and that's actually maybe a real good resource, because once you find out kind of what's going on, you're going to have to put together a plan. And I talk about it in a like this. You have to sample, according to the regs, you have to sample twice a year. And you sample where you might have contamination. And earlier I named off, you could get contamination in receiving the drugs, transporting the drugs, compounding the drugs, administering the drugs, handling the drugs in terms of waste disposal or spills. And so what I've kind of recommended to people is that if you got to do it twice a year, it might be good that you do each of those areas. So you start out maybe and sample in the area where you receive the drugs. Do that maybe in the first month. In the second month, go to the storage areas where the drugs are stored, the transportation. Third month, maybe the pharmacy where they're being compounded. Fourth month, maybe go up to the floor where the drugs are being dispensed, the clinic or the area in the hospital where you're given the drugs. Certainly, waste disposal, it's a particularly important area to sample. And then, if there is a spill and the spill is cleaned up, sampling after that. So you can put together a program, and certainly the consultants that work for AIH can help you with that. The third option, and this is an excellent option as well, is designate someone in the facility. If you're in the pharmacy, you're the pharmacist, you're the responsible party. Maybe you have one of your folks designated as, hey, twice a year I want you to do some wipe sampling for the drugs that we're compounding, be it 5-fluorosil or cyclophosphamide or any of the chemo drugs, that you work a lot with. I know some of our clients have looked at their records and have seen what do they compound mostly. One in particular that I'm thinking of said that 80% of their chemo administration includes 5-fluorosil. So they, look for that drug. And again, Jack will get into it, in the next time around, but we can help you do the sampling, and we can give you a lot of advice. So, sampling is the key. And again, why do we sample? I think, Andy, you can address it one more time. The whole idea of cleanliness. This is kind of at least the starting point, right?
You sample to know where you are. You sample to know what areas need attention. If you sample and find that areas are not a problem, you can move your attentions elsewhere. Maybe you still check every area periodically, but you sample to establish where your problems are, you address your problems, and you resample. And again, you use the sampling to tell you where your practices need improvement, and the areas that don't show a problem to begin with or show improvement, and you can pay less attention to those, and you put your attentions where problems are indicated by sampling. Help you to see where you are.
Right. I tell people, don't worry initially here about, where and how you're sampling. What you need to worry about is if you're not sampling. I mean, this is really, a program that's going to evolve. People say, well, what should I do, Jeff? And what I tell them is I said, go out, order a kit, get Jack to send you out half a dozen kits. Sample where you think there might be a problem. And then we'll send you the results. The results are very easy to interpret. And you can see, hey, do I have elevated levels in this area or that area? Then you can use that as your basis for the starting to put together the program. And that, I believe, will be well accepted by FDA or the Board of Pharmacy. What won't be is if you say, well, no, I'm not doing anything. Why? Well, I don't know what to do, So that's what we're here for. We want to help you through that process. The other question that I think we get asked a lot about in terms of USP 800 is who should be doing this? And I wrote down some numbers before the meeting today, and it's based on the regs here, and hospitals need to be doing it. There's over 6,000 hospitals in the United States that fall under this. Pharmacies, 67,000 pharmacies, 250,000 clinics. Again, if they're handling high potency hazardous drugs, they need to be doing it. Nursing homes, veterinarian offices, laboratories, anyone that is handling hazardous drugs. And again, if you go to the document that we have up on the website, NIOSH list of hazardous drugs in a healthcare setting, published in 2016, that goes through it. And I think there's probably upwards of 200 drugs that fall in that category. So, that's the introduction for now. Any thoughts, guys? Anything else that we want to touch on at this point?
No, I don't have anything else. Just looking forward to the future videos that we do, and talking to our customers and answering questions.
Leandro,
said, Jeff,
what about from your standpoint?
This is our first webinar, and so we're gonna put this live. So I would like to thank you guys for the opportunity to be here with you guys. And I know this subject should bring a lot of questions. Maybe Jack, you can give them contact, how they can contact us. So if they had any doubts and they want to talk about this topic, maybe they can reach us in your contact. May you give to our audience your contact?
Sure. The best way to reach us by telephone is our toll-free number. It's 800-888-8061. My direct extension is 5108, or you can dial 1 for our customer service department. You can also reach me by email at jsimila, that's the letter J, S-I-M as in Mike, I-L-A, @analyticscorp.com. And our website address is analyticscorp.com, www.analyticscorp.com. So thank you, and I'm looking forward to talking to you all.
Yeah, thanks everyone. And as I said, in the next week to 2 weeks, we'll be on here again and spend a lot of time on the sampling process, because that's an area that we are constantly being asked about. So watch for that, and please don't hesitate to contact us.
Give us a call.
Any questions? Yeah, we look forward to it. So thanks again.
Hey, thanks everyone, and
Thanks.
see everybody on the next video.
Yeah, that'd be great.
All right.